You know the story about Goldilocks? She tried so many things: porridge, bed, chair. They were either too soft, too hard, too cold, too hot. They weren't right. Well, Goldilocks, if you're in the market for a Macan Electric, I found the one for you. Let me save you some time. I was a huge fan of the Porsche Macan GTS when it came out. So once the Macan Electric rolled into the picture, I had really high expectations. Actually.
Hello?
Hey Mike, you already did a video on the Electric Macan, right?
Yep, got that covered.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm just gonna focus on the GTS stuff then. Thanks so much, appreciate that.
Oh, come on.
What a guy. Anyways, what's specific to the GTS?
GTS is an acronym meaning Gran Turismo Sport, or Grand Touring Sport, something you can drive on the roads and on the track. Historically, it's a concept dating back to 1963, when they literally just made a race car road legal. But the first real GTS models hit the public in the 80s, and then the US finally got GTS in the 90s, when they started meaning what they mean today. It was meant to be the sweet spot between everyday usability and motorsport-inspired performance, which checks out from a company like Porsche. It's no coincidence GTS is usually my favorite trim.
The GTS is more about driving than anything, but it also looks better than all of the rest of them, in my opinion. First of all, this Carmine red color is gorgeous. There's some cool colors for GTS, but because it's Porsche, you can spec, I think, 75 or 80 different colors. Sky's the limit. There's a new sport design package, which is standard on GTS, and the front end looks really aggressive and sharp. You got kind of a front splitter. The wheels are really cool and also specific to GTS. There's a side skirt on the side, where side skirts go, of course. Blacked out lights, a little thin black spoiler, which I love, and makes this awkward sloped roof look a little less awkward, and a little diffuser down at the bottom. Beyond that, there's the Macan GTS badge to show that you're cool and sensible. And you have your little wiper here, which is, of course, optional because it's Porsche. So what else is different? Well, the price. It's very expensive. It's over 100 grand, but I think driving is where they try to defend their price tag. So let's go do that. Driving the GTS is where everything starts to make sense. And it's never really been about the pure numbers with GTS. It's about the balance of everything. Although the numbers are still pretty insane and frankly unnecessary. 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, which is crazy. Over 500 horsepower, over 700 pound-feet of torque. So here with the GTS, Porsche did the same thing they did with the Taycan. They took the turbo powertrain and just detuned it a bit, which technically gives us the most headroom. You can drive it really hard and probably never run into overheating. So of course it's all-wheel drive, dual motor, and the rear motor is overly beefy, you could say. Also helping you put that power down is the torque vectoring system, also from the Turbo Macan. Basically, it's just a limited slip differential for the rear axle, and that helps better put the power to the wheels. The battery is the same as all the other Macans, which is about 100 kilowatt hours, 95 usable, and that gives you a range of roughly 288 miles. Fortunately for you, Porsche is usually a bit conservative, so we've seen a lot of people get over that in real-world experience. And if you were to go find some 20-inch wheels from somewhere else, you could get even more range. Charging is still fantastic. It peaks at 270 kilowatts if you find the right charger, and it will give you 10 to 80% in just over 20 minutes. That makes for very easy road tripping. The steering feel is another place Porsche excels. Even with electric vehicles, which a lot of people say are a bit drab and boring and uninspired, Porsche, I think, found some inspiration. I actually have some road feel through the steering wheel. It's awesome. And this car comes standard with 2-valve air suspension, which really helps with keeping it planted around the corners. Although when you're coming into a corner with brakes and the car fighting against body roll, that's when you can start to feel the weight, well over 5,000 pounds. But even then, it actually doesn't quite feel that heavy. That's partially due to the rear steering. That is optional, just like many things with Porsche, but I'd say well worth it. That air suspension is standard across the board with Macans, at least here in the US. And it's actually just a hair lower on the Macan GTS compared to the other trims. Just to, I guess, tell your friends that it's lower and more performance-y, but it's not really something you're probably gonna notice. What you will notice about the suspension is how adaptive and flexible it can be. Being a GTS, of course, you could take it to the track, put it in sport mode, Sport Plus mode. Of course, I'm enjoying that here in the canyons, not on a track, and that really stiffens up the car. It adds this enhanced Porsche sound experience, which just pumps in fake, kind of real, it's the Porsche motor amplified through the speakers, and gives you a more exhilarating experience. But then I could go take this on a highway and just cruise around and be very comfortable putting the suspension back in normal mode. That's kind of the magic and the beauty of air suspension. What's really cool is you can separate ride height from suspension feel. So on a road like this, that's a little bit bumpy to my liking, I could actually have the car raised a little bit, but still keep that stiff suspension feel. Helps you ride the corners like you're on rails, which is a term far too many car journalists use, unfortunately. The braking feel is fantastic, as it is in many Porsches, and you actually have two different levels of regenerative braking, or recuperation as Porsche calls it. Basically, you can't really control that other than putting it into Sport Plus mode or just having it, back in normal mode where it's two levels of regen there, much more aggressive in Sport Plus, to kind of emulate engine braking or downshifting even. I do wish you could have even more recuperation off throttle, and I honestly wish you could do one pedal driving. Porsche's reason for not allowing one pedal driving is they're claiming a lot of people are coming over from the combustion world and they simply aren't used to it. I still think it should be an option, and I think it's ironic that it's not an option coming from a company who is made famous for having options. The sister car to this, the Audi Q6 e-tron on the same platform, does have one pedal driving, so I know it's possible. Speaking of options, you have plenty of tire packages, various levels of sport or all season on 21 or 22-inch wheels. I kind of wish there was a 20-inch wheel so you could have more sidewall for more comfort, but I guess if you're in that camp, maybe you're not buying a GTS, you're going down to the cheaper models. So driving is really what the GTS is all about. I think it's the best balance of everything people could want, and probably more than they need. I think most people would be fine with a 4 or a 4S like we've filmed before from that fabulous video by Mike Danger. But what GTS has always meant to Porsche is just the balance of everything. The car you could take to the track and then drop your kids off at school, or maybe vice versa there. So, props to Porsche for trying to put their feet in two different camps. On one hand, they're trying, and I think succeeding, to be a luxury SUV with all of the quiet and comfort and composure that one could want. And then they want it to be able to come alive on a mountain road or racetrack and give you all the theater and pomp and circumstance that you might want in an electric supercar. So I stepped out of this thinking, who could possibly need to step up into the turbo? People already complain about that badge being on a car, well, without a turbo. And so that's where I think the GTS really is the sweet spot. Granted, most people would be fine with the base model, but to quote a very wise and famous saying, treat yourself.